From Home Alone type booby traps to saw traps, here are some of the scariest booby traps used in war. Number 1. Punji Sticks. Punji Sticks, also known as Punji Sticks, were the most infamous of the booby traps used in the Vietnam War, said to account for 2% of wounds to American soldiers. They were mostly made out of bamboo and occasionally metal. They varied in length and width and had a sharpened spike on one end to impale the victim. Sometimes the sticks were smeared with urine, feces, or plant poison to also cause infection. This was especially easy because the humidity and temperature were perfect for bacteria growth. The sticks were often jammed into dirt and grass camouflage pits dug in areas likely to be passed by the troops, which soldiers would then fall into and become impaled. The point of injury was usually in the lower leg area, with the sticks not necessarily meant to kill, but rather designed to slow down. Punji sticks were also used in conjunction with the barbed wire in tunnels, and sometimes deployed in preparation for an ambush in areas where soldiers might be expected to take cover. Number 2. The Mace Trap. Possibly one of the worst booby traps US soldiers had to face was the mace. It could be made in many different forms, such as being concrete, a spiked mud ball, a wooden box, and as it was most often, a spiked log. Mace traps were generally made to be very heavy, typically weighing upwards of 40 pounds. They would then have the spikes planted into it. The mace trap would be suspended on a tree attached to the end of the rope. Based on the tripwire, once the wire was triggered, it would swing down from the tree acting as a pendulum. Kind of like Kevin and his paint cans.
Heads up! Don't worry, Marv, I'll get him for you!
Usually hitting multiple people at once, aiming for their head and upper torso. This trap was one of the most feared and used traps in the Vietnam War. Number 3. The Venus Flytrap. The Venus Flytrap was another box trap, except the spikes were mounted onto the sides pointing downwards. If a victim happened to fall into one of these, they would not be injured on their descent. Rather, when they tried to escape by pulling up their leg, the spikes would dig into their leg, inflicting excruciating pain. This trap was made to slow down enemies and to reveal their location from the extremely loud screams. Number 4. The Tiger Trap. Similar to the mace, the tiger trap consisted of a weighted spiked studded board, the weight usually being heavy bricks and stones placed on top of the board. Suspended in a tree, a tripwire would then be placed at ground height, attached to the rope holding the studded board. Any combatant who tripped this wire would release the weighted plank, sending it plummeting down onto their head. Number 5. The Side Closing Trap. Made out of 2 wooden slats with spikes attached to both sides, they were tightened with large rubber bands and held apart with a prop. When the prop was stepped on, it would send the victim flying down, engaging the 2 slats to slam into their sides, impaling their body. Number 6. Snake Pits. Snakes were commonly used in traps inside tunnels. Tripwires would trigger the release of snakes hidden inside bamboo sticks, and it was often bamboo pit viper snakes were used. If you were bitten by one of these snakes, the flesh surrounding the bite turned necrotic, swollen, and extremely painful. And if you were extremely unlucky, you would come across the Malayan crate snake, also known as the 2-step snake, as that's how far a soldier could make it after being bitten by one, due to the snake's venom. American tunnel rats had to be specially trained to navigate and disarm these traps. Snakes would be placed in pits dug underground, which would make them fiend for food after days of starvation. Once again covered by a plank, if a soldier was unlucky enough to end up on top of this cover, he would fall through only to be bitten by many poisonous snakes. Snakes were also hidden in soldiers' packs and valuable places, and sometimes tied into branches of trees by their tails at face height. Because of multiple days without food, the snakes would often attack anyone who came in their vicinity. Number 7. Bridge Traps. The bridge trap was usually set over a ditch with water or mud. Below the bridge were bamboo sticks. They were cut low enough to make them blend into the water so no soldier would be able to spot them from above. If the water level was too low, dams would be used to keep the water level high enough to cover the deadly sticks. As for the mud, well, they would just be covered in mud. The bridge would be partially cut in the middle, so when the bridge collapsed, all the soldiers would be sent down to be impaled by the sticks. Number 8. Bamboo Whip Trap. Another sharpened bamboo trap. The whip consisted of spikes over a long bamboo pole. The pole was to be pulled back into an arch with high tension using the catch attached to a tripwire. When the wire was tripped, the catch would give out and send a foot-long spike into the trooper's chest at 100 miles an hour. Number 9. The Door Trap. This trap existed mostly in buildings. These swinging traps would be placed above a doorway attached to a tripwire connected to the door. When an intruder opened the door, it would release the tripwire, sending the spiked bamboo stick or a smaller log to impale him. Number 10. Flag bombs. When the Viet Congs realized that they could no longer hold a base, most of their soldiers would leave, with a few staying behind to set traps for the US troops. They would rig ammunition boxes to blow and hide grenades in valuable boxes. And lastly, they would plant the flag bomb, connected to an almost invisible tripwire. They knew the US troops loved to capture enemy flags, so eventually when they arrived to the base, to prove they captured it, they would take down the flag. And that's when the tripwire would set off the bomb, blowing everyone up in its proximity. Number 11. Picture bombs. During the later years of World War II, the German forces became infamous for their booby trapping methods. And driven by desperation, they developed a multitude of traps that were especially accurate and unstable. One of the most infamous examples of these are the anti-officer crooked picture bombs. The idea stemmed from German engineers in Northwest Europe. With little supplies left and constant losses, the Germans had become desperate. Thinking that it would be easiest to cut the head off the snake, they started to go after the Allied officers. To do this, they booby-trapped the largest and least damaged buildings in every town, thinking that the high-ranking personnel would most likely set up base in these buildings. The Germans still ran into problems, as conventional traps would only explode during the initial exploration of a building. This is where the crooked picture bombs came into play. To plant one, a space would be hollowed out in the wall behind a picture or painting and filled with explosives. The picture would then be angled to the side and rigged to explode when it was straightened, killing everyone nearby. Number 12. The chocolate bar. This chocolate bar explosion was one of a kind. It was specifically made for Winston Churchill, in the hopes his sweet tooth would lead to his death. The bomb was made of steel with a thin layer of real chocolate covering it. When the end piece of the chocolate was broken off, it would pull a piece of canvas that would ignite the bomb after a delay of 7 seconds. Which, if you think about it, is definitely enough time to realize and get your ass out the way. The lethal slabs of chocolate were packed with enough explosives to kill anyone within several meters.